The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it is a mock draft Wednesday. Hour number one will be spent in the war room, totally on the 2024 first round mock draft. Very excited about it. Don't really have a lot else to add on the setup other than, later in the show, we're excited to do some other stuff, including being joined by Washington Mystics draft pick Aaliyah Edwards. So we're pumped about that later in the show. But for right now, Ant, anything we got to do on the front end here? Or I guess we could explain how we're doing the draft today. But other than that, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so this is Mock Draft 3.0. This one is going to be an alternating pick mock draft. We did not flip a coin. Anthony's decided he didn't want the burden of picking for the Commanders. So I will take on that quote-unquote burden. I will make the pick at 2, which means Anthony has the first pick. He will pick odds. I will pick evens. We can negotiate trades if we want to, so I think that is worth mentioning. I don't anticipate us doing a lot of this, but perhaps there will be some. And other than that, we're going to go through the first round. And then depending on how we're doing on time, we might skedaddle into the second round, at least to pick 40, if Washington still has that pick. Okay. So I've got even, so I've got all of Washington's picks, which feels relevant. The only other team with multiple picks is the Vikings, and you have 11 and 23.
Yes, sir.
So if you want to make a trade, you are going to have to call potentially yourself. I don't know, 3 or 5. You could call me at 4 for the Cardinals. We'll do all trades when a team is on the clock. So we're not going to trade the 6th pick, for instance, while we're still on pick 4. Other than that, it's time to rumble. Let's do this. Ant, you have the first pick, and the Chicago Bears are on the clock.
Boom, boom, boom.
Dun, 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 dun,
We're going to draft Caleb Williams.
Shocker.
I know. I ran to the podium. You know how the what are they called? The Fever, they ran to the podium to, announce Caleb. That's what I just did. I know the Bears are probably going to use all 5 minutes of their allotted time.
Don't they have like 10 or 15?
It might
first
be.
Round?
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, they definitely do.
But I'm not wasting any time. I'm running to the podium. Caleb Williams is my guy.
All right, number 1 pick, Caleb Williams. Draft, got it. Check. Excellent. Wonderful. Okay. Washington Commanders are on the clock at 2. God. It's so funny because they're meeting with all these guys. They're doing like this group meeting, if you will, with all these quarterbacks, and they're getting a chance to talk to them and put them on the whiteboards and see how they interact as a group. And they're doing all this stuff. And Ant, you want to know what really sucks right now for me?
What?
I don't have access to any of that information.
Really?
Well, yeah, I'm not in those meetings. I'm sitting here with you doing a mock draft. This is what I'm paid to do. That's what they're paid to do. They get paid better, I presume. Depends on who we're talking about. Actually, no, I'm pretty sure everyone who's making it into that level of room at this stage in the process is probably paid better than me. All due respect to, me. But when it comes to the Commanders, I really do think it's going to come down to, like, which guy do they like more? And I think you can make a really strong case as player, as people, for any of them. I think that's what makes it hard is there's no one that I look at that I'm like, I got to take him off the board. There's no one that I hear interviews with that I'm like, I don't know. You don't hear any bad rumblings about any of these guys off the field or who they are as leaders or their work ethics. And that just makes it really hard to pick between Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy. We picked McCarthy last time to kind of just mix it up and see what happened to the rest of the draft. There's a huge part of me that feels the most comfortable with McCarthy. But I think they're probably going to go Daniels. Totally justifiable pick. He throws with good anticipation. it looks really good when you just watch it. You're like, oh yeah, that dude looks like a quarterback. The speed, I think, will translate to the next level. Like, he will still be able to run by guys. And I think the biggest thing is that, like, he's shown an adaptability that he's not done, even though he's an older player, he's not done getting better. And I think because of that, that's going to be one of the big things that pushes them as a person. Like, who's coachable? Jaden Daniels is freaking coachable. We know McCarthy is too from his time with Harbaugh. But Daniels' leap, I think, is actually going to be seen as a positive because he did all that VR work, because he lived in the building, because he put in the time, which is exactly what you have to do as a pro. So I'm going to go Jaden Daniels, the quarterback out of LSU, as the number 2 pick for Washington. That means you're on the clock at 3, and you have the New England Patriots.
I am on the clock, and just as the Bears did, I'm running to the podium. I'm not walking. I'm not walking briskly. I mean, I'm sprinting full-fledged to the podium to get the guy who I hope will be our franchise's QB for the foreseeable future. And that guy is Drake May, ladies and gentlemen.
So you're sticking and picking at 3 with New England. You are.
I am.
Because the Vikings have, like, I know you're supposed to be the Vikings too, but since you're not going to play your part very well.
Hold on. Because, Craig, we're not done yet. 3 is going to the Patriots. We're going to stand pat. The Vikings, however, will be making a call soon. Sooner than you think.
Okay. All right. Draft it is. Drake May, which leaves the Arizona Cardinals on the clock at 4 with the top 3 quarterbacks off the board and the best players in the draft, theoretically, in the eyes of most, outside of Williams. I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask. But the best player in this draft, I think, is Marvin Harrison Jr. Mm-hmm. The easiest evaluation for sure is Marvin Harrison Jr. And the Arizona Cardinals have a need at wide receiver. So I'm going to start writing down that name, Marvin Harrison Jr., at wide receiver, and I'm ready to hand in the card unless something else happens here.
I'm not calling for your pick.
You're not calling. Okay.
I'm not calling for the 4th pick.
I do think that they will take some calls. I do think that the Vikings, I do think that the who's at 12? The Broncos and the Raiders will all call here. By the way, I think the Raiders are going to try to offer everything they can for Jaden Daniels to Washington, just because that's how much they like Jaden. Yep. I don't think Washington will say yes. Just feel like it's worth pointing out. But I think the Vikings are at a point in their progression here under Jonathan Gannon that they really want to get elite players, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is as elite as you can get. So I'm drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. At number 4. So you're on the clock, 5 Chargers.
And this is where my Vikings, and I know it's sort of kind of similar to what we did last week, but I think Marvin Harrison is too good of a prospect to, pass up for the Cardinals at 4, because guess what? If the Cardinals don't get Marvin Harrison and they trade off that pick, the Chargers will definitely try to go out there and get him. They shipped off Keenan Allen. They shipped off Mike Williams. I just don't see them passing up on a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think the Cardinals are going to stand pat at 4. But I think they'll be willing to trade back and allow the Vikings to trade up. So I'm getting on the phone.
Okay. So the trade then is going to be 11 and 23 for 5. That
I don't know if it's 11 and 23. I think that's a little rich.
So that's what it's going to cost, bro. Like, to get up to in the top 3, you're talking about 3.
Top 5?
Get in the top 5. Like, you're talking about maybe it's 2 plus, a 5th or something like that. Or do you want to, do a 11 and the Vikings first next year? And because, like, I don't know. PFF is saying that, like, the Chargers, it's too rich. I don't believe PFF. I think PFF's trade chart is garbage. Like, I'm telling you right now, if I control one of these two teams and you offered me 11 and 23 for 5, I'm like, no, you got to throw in
What
something
about
else.
11 and a second then?
Minnesota doesn't have a second this year or next year.
And they just acquired a 4th. Oh, no, that's the Chargers. Ooh. All right, first.
It's either 11 and your first next year or 11, 23, and I'm going to make you give up something else too. I'm going to do like a 4th or a 5th.
We're going to 11 and the first next year.
Okay. So I'm going to do that plus 108, which is the first 4th rounder.
Okay.
Offer trade accepted. All right, so now Minnesota is on the clock at 5. They've somehow kept 23.
Yep.
But they better be good this year because if not, the Chargers are getting a top 10 pick next year from them. So at 5, I'm guessing you are going J.J. McCarthy?
We're going J.J. McCarthy.
All right, J.J. McCarthy is the pick. Giants are on the clock. That is me. We'll take a break, come back, and roll through about the next 10 picks here. Mock Draft 3.0 off to a bang of a start here on The Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. The Hoffman Show mock draft 3.0. First round alternating picks between me and Anthony. Commanders selected Jaden Daniels at number 2. Caleb Williams went first, then Drake May. Third to the Patriots, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then a trade up by the Vikings, 2-5. J.J. McCarthy is the pick there. So I'm on the clock, 6 with the New York Giants. They need a lot. They need offensive line. They need linebacker. They need DB. They need wide receiver. They need quarterback. The thing is, I think everyone's just assuming Malik Neighbors is the pick, and I think there's a reason for that. Neighbors at this point is, in my opinion, easily the best. Not easily, but is the best player on the board. And you need to figure out if Daniel Jones is the Daniel Jones of 2 years ago that you can win football games with or not. And getting Malik Neighbors will help you figure that out. So very easily, the pick here for the New York Giants at 6, wide receiver Malik Neighbors from LSU.
I love it. Love it, Craig. So now we have the Titans on. We have the Titans on the clock.
Yes.
And I'm not going to lie, Craig. We've been getting a few calls, but we weren't able to, really strike the deal that we wanted to.
You sure about that? You sure there's not going to be more calls that could potentially have you interested?
In trading all the way up to 7?
Yeah.
I think.
Hi, it's the Cincinnati Bengals on the phone. I'd like to offer you 18, and I'd like to offer you 18, 49, and 97 for 7 and 38. I have no idea if the math on that works out, other than PFF says the trade will likely be accepted. So you get to move.
You said a first?
Oh wait, hold on. That's a terrible trade for you. That's not worth the pickup. I would like, let's 18 and 97 for 7, or 18 and 80 for 7.
Don't like it.
18 and 49 for 7.
I mean, I'm interested, but I don't like it. Am I being tough?
No, not necessarily. Depends on if you really like someone at 7 or not. Here's my thing with the Titans. I don't know that Joe Alt is Bill Callahan's type of offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm the Titans and I feel good about getting like an Amarius Mims at 18 and I can pick up another pick, I would do that. I don't know that is what they're going to do. And I don't know that I don't have a trade chart in front of me. Here, I can pull one up though.
I was wishing, the Jets. Who else? The Jets, possibly the Broncos. That's where I was looking more so to trade back to, because I still want a high quality offensive tackle. I do have 7 picks in the rest of the draft, but I don't want to fall too far back. So yeah.
Let's see. 49 is. Yeah, I'd probably need to add something else to that. I'd probably need to add a future third or something like that, to get that done. But okay, I tried. Yeah. You're gonna stick and pick.
Yep, the effort was there. We're gonna go with Joe Alt though.
Okay, Joe Alt, he's the pick. Number 8, Falcons. They need D-line. They need corner. Everyone's just going. I'm gonna mix it up. Everyone's going Dallas Turner here. There's a reason I want the Bengals to make this pick, or to get up here. And that, let's see. I'm gonna do. There we go. 18, 49, and 97 for 8 and 74.
Ooh.
So it winds up being, I don't have the actual, I have a draft chart in front of me, but that's too many numbers to add up. But that feels right. It's a 3 for 2. The Bengals give up their first and their second and a late third.
They don't have any more. They have 2 more picks after that.
The Bengals? No, the Bengals have plenty of picks.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong team.
Yeah, the Falcons are short on picks. So they get to pick up an extra pick here. They get to pick up 97 and 49, which then gives them some mobility to potentially trade around in the second and third rounds if they want to.
Okay.
So I'm going to make this trade for the Falcons and the Bengals.
I like it.
And I'm going to, with the 8th pick in the draft, have the Cincinnati Bengals take Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. They then are free to trade T. Higgins to whoever would like to pay T. Higgins a lot of money. They have now gotten a T. Higgins type of player to replace T. Higgins at a rookie contract, and Joe Burrow is very happy.
Okay.
That's my logic.
I love it.
All right. And then also, by the way, the reason you got to get to 8 is because everyone thinks Rome Odunze is going 9 to Chicago.
Yep. And
which now puts you in a bind, Anthony, because you don't have 9 to play with, or you don't have Rome Odunze at 9 for Chicago.
I don't. But it's all good.
You do have Dallas Turner if you want to put him opposite of Montez Sweat.
And that's exactly what I was thinking. Because I was thinking to go offense with Rome, but the fact that we have Dallas Turner, to put opposite of Montez, I think that'll work out with us as well. We're receiving some calls as well, but we're going to stand pat, and we're going to go with our guy, Dallas Turner, with the Chicago Bears.
Okay, that puts me on the board at 10 for the Jets. Oh, this is hard. Do you do the Brock Bowers thing that everyone kind of wants them to do? Or do you, and Aaron Rodgers might be beating down the draft room door to do, or do you do the quote-unquote prudent thing and take a tackle and start the run on tackles? The problem with tackle here is a lot of the guys that they think, like a lot of the guys that are in this range are probably, or like might be better at guard. Talisi Fuaga, Troy Fontenot, J.C. Latham, a lot of folks have in this kind of range. The question is it too rich for Fashanu? But you can play, like the Jets do need a right tackle as well to learn under Morgan Moses. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take Talisi Fuaga, the offensive lineman out of Oregon State. Fuaga is a guy that can play guard immediately and then maybe kick out to tackle next year if Morgan Moses is not back because he only signed a 1-year deal. So I'm going to go Talisi Fuaga, tackle out of Oregon State.
Okay. I love
Tackle
it.
guard out of Oregon State.
And now the Chargers are back on the clock?
Chargers are on the clock after the trade with Minnesota.
I think this was going to surprise you, Craig. I'm going to go with Brock Bowers. I think.
Wow.
Yes. Hear me out.
Okay.
Austin Eckler, he's gone. Keenan Allen's gone. They need playmakers here in Los Angeles. And I think Brock Bowers, I think Harbaugh was just going to do a fantastic job of just trying to get the ball in his hands because we know what he can do when he has the ball in his hands. I think he's the best playmaker on the board available, so I'm going to go with Brock Bowers at 11.
All right, then. Brock Bowers it is. At 12, the Broncos, they could use a receiver. They could use some interior line help. They could use edge help. They can use help at corner. There are some good corners, like Kenyon Mitchell's a potential play here. But I do think Bo Nix fits with what the Broncos want to do. And so I'm going to go ahead, and because they don't have their second rounder, or their second rounder, I should say. No, they don't. That's right. They don't have their second rounder. So this is kind of their shot. So either, honestly, the best case for the Broncos is, can you trade down here? And is there someone that someone else really likes that would be worth trading up for? The problem is I don't know who that player is. I don't know who at this point, unless someone loves one of these tackles, they're going to trade up for. So I'm just going to stick and pick, and I'm going to go Bo Nix.
Bo Nix. Okay. You're going with Bo Nix?
It's done.
All right, bet. Say
I
less.
hit draft.
Say less. And now the Raiders are on the clock?
Yep, last pick here before the break.
The Raiders are getting a call.
The Raiders are getting a call. Okay.
That call is coming from the Indianapolis Colts.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
They want to trade up 2 spots to go out there and get cornerback Kenyon Mitchell, baby.
Okay. What's the trade here?
So the Colts are going to trade 15 and a
third?
A third.
I think a third.
15 and a third to move up 2 spots.
All right, so 15 and 82.
15 and 82.
For 13. And we're going to hit force this trade because Anthony's in charge. All right, Colts are on the clock. They got Kenyon Mitchell, and that leaves the Saints on the clock at 14. It's Mock Draft 3.0 here on the Hoffman Show. We will continue with the rest of the first round. Try to get through up through the mid-20s next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We are in the middle of Mock Draft 3.0, where Anthony and I are alternating picks. And the Commanders earlier in the draft, I controlled them. I got the evens. Anthony's got the odds. I had Jaden Daniels as the pick for Washington. We are now On one of my picks, pick number 14, the New Orleans Saints are on the clock. And damn, this is tough, Ant, because they need help in multiple spots. D-line, I think, becomes really interesting, like interior D-line here. Byron Murphy, arguably the best defensive player in this draft, is still available to them. They could certainly go tackle. I think that's an intriguing spot for them. Wide receiver, like, is this Brian Thomas Jr. range? But I think I'm probably just going to go with one of the linemen here. And Troy Fautanu is the guy that's on, like, he's a very good athlete. Mike Golic Jr., who you'll hear from later on in the show, thinks he should actually play center and, like, he'd be an all-world center. So I'm a little hesitant there. Latham, same thing. Like, does he wind up being a guard? I'm gonna take the high athleticism upside swing though on Troy Fautanu. He played left tackle, most of the last couple of seasons. He's got some experience at guard. I'm gonna go Troy Fautanu for the Saints.
You took my guy, but guess what?
It's all right. Now you got the Raiders at 15. Who you got? Raiders traded down with the Colts. If you're just joining us, Colts to Kenyon Mitchell at 13. Indy's got the pick at 15 now. Raiders have the pick at 15 now.
Yeah, I'm torn on Fashanu or Latham. I definitely think.
How desperately do you want this guy to be a tackle versus are you okay if he moves inside a guard?
I desperately need him to be a tackle.
Then Fashanu's the pick.
I think there it is then.
All right. The DC product, Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, is the pick there. Okay. 16, Seahawks. Bunch of different directions they could go that I think would be super interesting. They certainly could use a pass rusher, and Laiatu Latu sitting there as the most polished pass rusher in the draft feels right. But they also need interior O-line help. And Graham Barton is one of the most unique athletes in this draft. He might be able to play tackle, but he's probably a guard or a center, and he's going to be really, really good either way. So I'm going to go Graham Barton out of Duke for Seattle. Maybe a little rich for him, but also probably not. Like, his floor is super high. I know I'm getting a good football player, so I'm going to go Graham Barton.
All right, you're going Graham Barton?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and with the Jags, we're going to go – hold on, let me go back. We're going to go with Terrion Arnold at cornerback.
All right, you're taking the cornerback out of Alabama.
Yes,
Terrion
sir.
Arnold. All right, so now I had traded down earlier. The Falcons are where Cincinnati used to be. They are actually, like, jumping for joy here, I think.
Because they're a guy.
Well, they can take Byron Murphy here.
Yeah.
The defensive tackle out of Texas, who is kind of freaky. And by the way, probably would be going to L.A. If next to replace Aaron Donald if he doesn't go here. So I'm going to go Byron Murphy out of Atlanta. Wow, that really worked out for the Falcons. Good job, me.
Yeah, it did. And I just did the wrong person. I can't undo it now.
No,
with the Rams. The Rams are on the clock, right?
Yep, Rams at 19.
Yeah, so you just took Byron Murphy. There's one D tackle off the board.
Yeah.
Another one's coming off the board. I'm going Drazon Newton.
All right, you got old Johnny Newton.
Yes, sir.
That's a good pick as well. So like Lee Corso. I'm out here with my pencil. Good pick. All right. The Steelers on the clock at 20. They could use interior offensive line, but also could use tackle. Man, if they could get lucky enough for Fautanu to fall to them, like, that would be sweet. Latham's definitely in the mix here. I don't know that he can go all the way inside to center, which is what they need. And, like, they could just go Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. But you want to know what? I'm going to go a different direction. Wide receiver is another need for them, and they love their big speed guys. You want a big guy that can go get a nice lofted deep ball from Russell Wilson. How about Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU? This feels...
Woo!
Oh, that feels like such a Steelers pick. Dang, I did it. Brian Thomas Jr., LSU.
Oh my
Miami,
gosh.
Miami on the clock now at 21.
Miami on the clock?
Yeah.
Oh.
Washington, by the way, I should just let you know, Washington certainly monitoring the Amarius Mims situation here.
And you just jinxed it, Craig, because that's who the Dolphins are going to go with.
Oh.
Super athletic guy. They got a lot of speed out there, so I think he would fit here.
All right.
In Miami. Way to jinx it, Craig.
What?
Way to jinx it.
Yeah, well, there goes Washington's trade back up in the first round idea. You know who else is kind of not thrilled about that?
Somebody's falling, though.
Philadelphia Eagles. Because they can always take a lineman and develop him and have him sit for a year. Who's falling in your mind? I mean, Latham's falling.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's like a tackle guard situation. He's not necessarily a pure
left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, he played, he's a right.
Yeah,
he's a right. So, like, could the Eagles look there? Could some of these other teams look there and try him outside? Maybe, but he's not the kind of guy that Washington is going to trade up for. Eagles at 22. I wish I knew more about their new defensive staff. I wish I knew about how creative they are willing to be. Because from a talent standpoint, there's a very obvious pick here. And that pick is Cooper DeJean. He can potentially play corner. He can potentially play safety. He can be like a weapon player. I just don't know how creative this new defensive staff in Philly is willing to be. But I'm going to say they're going to go mess around and find out. I'm going to go Cooper DeJean to Philly. And every Commanders fan is like, ugh. Because he's just a good football player.
You're going Cooper DeJean. Okay, I like it. Vikings are on the clock.
Vikings still on the clock. So Anthony did trade earlier up to get J.J. McCarthy for the Vikings.
Yes,
but
I did.
Traded because he only traded to 5 instead of inside the top 3 where many have projected. He was able to do it with 2 ones, one this year and the future one. Now, it's worth pointing out, I don't know if the Chargers are going to go for that. Maybe they will. Maybe they value some of the future picks and some of the future flexibility. It would seem like they would just want 11 and 23, but we did it. And so Vikings still on the clock at 23.
Vikings on the clock. They get a call.
Oh.
They get a call from Detroit.
From Detroit.
Down at 29. Yep.
Interesting.
From Detroit.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't get a call from, the Buffalo Bills, or I didn't get a call from the Bucks or anybody, but I did get a call from the Lions.
Okay.
And they want to trade 29 and maybe a 4th.
Here's the problem. Detroit does not have a 4th.
Okay.
They've got 73.
Which is not that's a third?
That's pretty rich. But we could do 73 or 23, and hilariously, 129 is a pick that they're missing. So you can basically undo a trade that has happened previously. Detroit, let's go Detroit, 29, 73, and the better of their 2 fourths next year for 23 and 129. Minnesota originally the holder of 73. Detroit originally the holder of 129, and then we'll go a 4th next year.
I like it.
All right, offer trade. Trade has been accepted. All right, so the Detroit Lions are on the clock at 23, and who are they taking?
They're going up to go get J.C. Latham.
So, they need another guard.
Yes.
So that's okay. So you're drafting Latham to be a guard.
Yes.
Interesting. He's thinking outside the box, boys and girls.
Do you like it or no?
I don't love it.
Okay.
He
a little rich?
He is not it's not even that it's rich. It's just like, you know what? I don't hate it though. Like, when you're a team like Detroit, go get your guys. That's actually how they've been successful. Is like they target specific players.
Like the running back they had last year.
Yeah, and a linebacker, Jack Campbell. Like, they are like, these are our guys. This is who we want. And I'm going to go get that guy, and we know how to use him. So if they like Latham, I don't think that's a bad move at all.
Okay.
I don't know the player. Like, I also look at them as a team that is willing to maybe sit around and see if they can get Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. You play him at guard for a year until Ragnow retires or if Ragnow gets hurt. Like, there's other things that players that I think are interesting there. Okay. And there's enough, like Jordan Morgan from Arizona. Like, how much worse is he than Latham? A lot of people are going to have them pretty similar, and you kind of got the similar, like, guard tackle thing going on.
Yeah.
So trading up for a guy who is a guard tackle when you have a bunch of other potential guard tackles feels a little silly to me, but I don't – if they think that he's significantly better and he's the last guy in that tier, not an unreasonable pick. And you only give up so much.
Yeah.
So, all right, that leaves the Cowboys on the clock at 24. You got the Cowboys, Packers, Bucks, and Cardinals next up. We'll finish out the first round, speed through the end of it. Next, it's Mock Draft 3.0 here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. It is Mock Draft 3.0. Commanders took Jaden Daniels at 2. We are near the end of the first round, alternating picks between me and Ant. The Dallas Cowboys, are on the clock. I've got the even picks. Ant's got the odds at 24. And I think I'm going to go Florida State edge Jared Verse here. Just a behemoth type of edge, hard edge setter. kind of similar to Dorrance Armstrong, who just left from a play style standpoint. Violent, physical player. And we also know that DeMarcus Lawrence is coming up in the final year of his deal. And so I'm going to go Jared Verse, the edge out of Florida State for the Cowboys, which puts you on the clock at 25 for the Packers.
It does.
It does.
It does. And I think, to be honest, I want to trade back. Trying to find a partner.
They do have a lot of picks.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need picks, but I also understand there's not necessarily someone that they
really want right here.
Are in love with. You could just go best player available type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, the best player available right now is Latu,
who is a good pick for them potentially.
Yeah. And then you got A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver. I don't really think they need to go that direction. Nate Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry. I like their young DBs already.
What if they went off, not necessarily off the board, but what if they went different style of pass rusher? What if they went like Chop Robinson out of Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, Preston's getting old. Rashawn Gary, he's still killing it. I think he'll be there for some time. I could understand it. I could understand them going Chop here.
Like it's a traits thing, right? Like for it depends on your style of rusher. And, do they just say like we're gonna move you around, we're gonna get creative, and we're gonna take the guy who's just different kind of athlete. For like Latu and Chop Robinson are two very, very different players.
Yeah. Robinson
is a traits guy, Latu's like a skill guy. There's also some medical stuff with Latu. So let's say that I think that's actually an interesting
Or they go
pick.
tackle, to be honest, because they did lose Bakhtiari.
Tackle
here. You got Jordan Morgan.
Jordan Morgan. I think Tyler Guyton would be the pick over Morgan here. That's actually not a bad pick at all for them. Yeah. The Oklahoma tackle who can probably play left or right. Crazy athlete.
Yeah, I think that's who I want to go with.
All right, Tyler Guyton. That's a good pick for the Packers at 25. Okay, so the Bucs are not light on picks, but they are a little light on picks. And Latu falling a bit. I do wonder if this is, I don't know, a place that the Washington Commanders potentially look at to say, we'll give you 36 and like 152 or even 36 and 100 for 26. Let me check the trade chart real quick. 26 or 26 is worth 700 points. 36 is worth 540 points. 100 is worth 100 points. So it's not quite enough. But what if it was 36 and 78 for 26? That becomes the question. If you're Washington, do you think that Latu is a game-changing edge player that is worth giving up 2 players? And this is where I go back to our chat with Alec Lewis of The Athletic yesterday, where it is just proven over time that 2 picks is better than 1. And if you're going to, but edge is also a premium position. I
mean, he's such a versatile defender. I think just with Dan Quinn.
I'm not going to do it. Washington backs out of the trade.
Okay.
I'm just going to take Latu for Tampa at 26.
Okay. You're going with Latu.
All right, Arizona back on the clock. They took Marvin Harrison earlier in the draft.
Yep, and we're going to take Chop here at this pick.
Oh, that's an interesting. I like that. All right, Buffalo is they're pretty psyched because they don't get Brian Thomas Jr., but they do have a pick of a bunch of different receivers, including A.D. Mitchell, 6'4", 196, ran crazy at the combine. I'm gonna go A.D. Mitchell for Buffalo. Fast, big receiver to replace Diggs / Gabe Davis. You got Minnesota now on the clock for the 18th time in the first round. You keep trading back.
Yep. Hey, look, we getting them picks now.
29. Who you got?
29.
And again, they have McCarthy at pick 5, and that's what they got so far.
I'm torn. I think I want to go Darius Robinson.
Oh, you're going D-line here.
I think that's where I
thought you might. I thought you might either go DB, Nate Wiggins. I could see you going like center, Jackson Powers Johnson. But okay.
Or Kool-Aid. I mean, Kool-Aid is still available too, but
yeah.
I think I want to go D-line here. I think I definitely want to go with Darius Robinson on the pass rush.
Okay, I gotta find him because he's
that far down.
Well, on PFF's board, but I don't know why PFF is so down on him. He's 100% in the mix to be a first-round pick. So, that is what it is. All right, Baltimore is on the clock. Which corner do they want? Do they want McKinstry or do they want Wiggins? Let's go Nate Wiggins. He's big physical corner. Or not. I mean, he's not like he's physical, but he's not huge. He's 6'2", but he's 185. Mm-hmm. But athleticism, competitiveness, that feels like a Baltimore Raven. I'll go Nate Wiggins at 30. All right, you're on the clock with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and we're going to go with our guy, Jordan Morgan, baby.
Okay, like that. Jordan Morgan, guard tackle out of Arizona. And then I've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Who is the best wide receiver available?
Or fastest.
Man. Yeah, that's the thing is like what kind of receiver do I want here? Because there is kind of a receiver for every type. You got like Leggett, who's the 6'3" monster, body type kind of guy. You obviously have the kid from Texas who broke the combine record for fastest 40.
Yep.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy. You got Ladd McConkey, who's really interesting for them as like an underneath slot kind of guy.
A big body too, Keon Coleman.
Yeah, you got the big body in Keon Coleman. I think Roman Wilson's super intriguing here for them, because he's got some speed. Ricky Pearsall, Logan loves Pearsall out of Florida. I don't know, man. There's too many damn receivers.
I was thinking about Xavier Worthy initially, but I forgot they got Hollywood Brown. So I'm thinking more of a...
Also, I passed the obvious correct answer. The correct answer is Troy Franklin. He's a class up from all those dudes. He's a vertical route type of guy, long, smooth strides. Like, he's twitched up. I'm going to go Troy Franklin, wide receiver out of Oregon. Okay. Quickly. Do you want to see if we can get to 36? I don't know if we have time. Sorry to the audience that I just gave that little bit of tease to. Oh, that was mean, Ant. I'm sorry.
That was.
It is what it is. All right. What did we learn from this mock draft? That is always something we do later on in the show. So we will get to that a little bit, later on in the show. But coming up next, not my beat. I'm the beat reporter today. I went and did actual reporting. Well, I sat in a press conference and asked questions. Those questions were asked of Michael Winger and Will Dawkins. What did they have to say about the Wizards' seasons? You'll hear from the Wizards' lead chief rebuilding executives. Yes, Michael Winger even used the word rebuild today. We'll talk about it next on the Hoffman Show. Thanks for checking out Mock Draft 3.0. Unless you're like, what are you talking about? In which case, you're just joining us, and that's quite all right, because if you go to the Hoffman Show podcast feed, Anthony will have our full first-round mock draft. We alternated picks for the entire first round, including the second overall pick for the Commanders, where I took Jaden Daniels, quarterback out of LSU. But what happened in the rest of it, you can check out the podcast, and of course, we'll put it up on YouTube a little bit later as well, at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. 5 o'clock, though, it is time, and we will, by the way, talk more NFL draft later on in the program. Mike Golic Jr. on the O-line class. Do not want to miss that. But 5 o'clock, time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Hey, Anthony. You want to know who was there today? Who had the top story of the day covered?
I think his first name is Craig and his last name is Hoffman.
That's right. I did actual on the ground, boots on the ground reporting today. Not really, not in super intense reporting. I went to the press conference. They allowed me in, which is because I'm a real media member, and got to ask some questions of Michael Winger and Will Dawkins. They both gave lengthy opening statements, and then took questions from me and Ava Wallace and Josh Robbins and the assembled reporters there at ESA, the Entertainment Sports Arena, of course, the home of the Mystics and the Wizards practice facility there in Southeast DC. And there was a lot of interesting things that I think come out of that. And I think Michael Winger set the tone very early with this statement that really does, I think, make us all back up for a second and appreciate the task that they have undertaken in rebuilding this team.
First, I want to offer my sincerest thanks to our fans, to our players, to their families, our families, to our partners, to our staff, and to Ted. What we're undertaking is hard, and everybody showed up. They showed up every day to help us along the way. They deserve our deepest gratitude for their resilience, for their care, for their support and their trust this season and for future seasons. And I just want to say thank you to them. Thank you to you guys, too. You spend so much of your time and your journalistic passion following us, telling our story as you see it, maybe not with the optimism that I would tell it. But nevertheless, I appreciate your truth searching, your truth telling, your professionalism, your commitment to your craft. We are a hardcover right now, and yet you guys also show up every day. You reach out, you try to find the truth, you try to find the story. And the one thing that I do really want you guys to know is that the two of us are here to help you, not run from you.
So that means that Michael Winger and Will Dawkins will just be on the show every day now because they're here to help us, not run. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think that the what we're doing is hard is the part that I want to underscore there. It's important to remember that building in the NBA is probably the hardest of any single sport. There is such a reliance on ultimately landing an elite player. And doing that is freaking hard. And then when you do that, you can't mess up that elite player. You have to be doing all of the other things, which I would say right now, more so than anything else, is the work that they're embarking on. They did a lot of talking today about the player development program and how much they have seen it work. And whether it's some of the things they provided to help Jordan Poole get out of his slump, and more on that in a moment, or Denny Avdia and Corey Kispert's improvement, or obviously where Bilal Coulibaly goes from here as perhaps the most important single player in the franchise. There is a lot that you have to get right in the NBA, and it takes multiple years, and it is really, really hard. So I actually appreciated that from Michael Winger because it's not an excuse. It's a reminder of just how hard this is. And he did, by the way, use the magic word today. It's the first time that Michael Winger has ever said this.
We began the rebuild knowing that I used it.
Genuinely funny moment. He that was scripted, but Michael Winger can deliver his lines. He also, I'm pretty sure, wrote those lines. I don't think that he relied on anybody else. Funny bit. Good bit from Michael Winger.
We began the rebuild knowing that I used it. We began the rebuild acknowledging that it was going to be hard. It was going to be long. We were going to have to make some tough decisions and endure some tough days, some tough games along the way. Clearly we did that. But eventually we wanted it to start to feel like a new place for the folks that had been here, with higher standards, loftier expectations, and a heightened level of accountability and togetherness. And I think that a lot of you heard from our players the other day. I hope you heard some of their positive reflections in those areas. We acknowledged that the gains that we would make organizationally were very unlikely to show up in the box scores, very unlikely to show up in the standings. They would show up in how our players and our staff felt every day when they came to work. They would show up in their individual improvements, whether it was skill, leadership, performance, their physical health, their mental health, whatever the case may be. That it would show up in how their bodies respond to heavier minutes, how their bodies respond to injury. And importantly for us, whether the people that came into our building every day were enjoying being here. And again, you heard from a lot of our guys, and we heard from a lot of our guys over the last handful of days, and they registered that. And so from that limited perspective, we're proud of that.
I know that is a lot of words that doesn't mean we're winning basketball games. But I think what that illustrates, assuming that it is correct, and I have no reason to believe that it is not, is just how bad the organization was before. Just how underdeveloped and discoordinated and lacking any cohesion and any real sense of what it meant to be a modern, productive NBA organization it was when they took over. That they had to focus on such minute details to make sure that they had these things on track, because they knew that like what they inherited, what they were walking into, wasn't going to get them anywhere remotely close to where they wanted to go. They're like, we got to make sure these guys can like play. Nevertheless, or play well, we got to make sure that they can actually handle the load of a season. And sure enough, you see guys like Denny and Corey who were here before, that all of a sudden they get in this weight program and they last the entire season. They had there was a relatively, I think Winger phrased it, a relatively healthy season for us until the very end. And they had obviously Tyus and Kyle and, some of the bigs have problems. But like, for instance, Marvin Bagley and Rashawn Holmes getting hurt towards the end of the year. Yeah, they weren't here in the weight program all year. So that's not a reflection of what they were doing in Washington. It's a reflection of what was going on in Detroit or the previous stop for Rashawn Holmes. And so once you get them in the program for a full offseason and they have a much better idea of what they need this offseason compared to what they did last season when they were just trying to evaluate based off of old stuff as opposed to having lived it with the players, and then you continue that process through the season, hopefully what that leads to is much a better availability for their guys in key moments next season if they are indeed competitive. Now, a lot of that seemed like positive spin, and it is to an extent, but it's positives within a very small context. Up next, you'll hear why Michael Winger says, like, yeah, all of this is good, and we can be proud of these small wins, but there was one overarching thing that just simply was not good enough and has to be fixed immediately moving forward. You'll hear Winger on that and more from today's Wizards season-ending press conference next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. What did Michael Winger and Will Dawkins say when I asked them about Jordan Poole's season and the idea that they seem to want to keep Poole and Tyus Jones together next season? You'll hear that before the end of this segment, so in the next 15 minutes here on the Hoffman Show. But I thought one of the things that was interesting from today is they did Winger and Dawkins, as today was the season-ending press conference for the Wizards, assembled over at the Entertainment Sports Arena, and they answered questions and gave some opening statements with some thoughts. And while there was a lot of, hey, we accomplished this, and we're really proud of that. We know it didn't end in wins, and kind of this acknowledgement that, hey, the thing that we want to ultimately get to, we're not close to yet. It wasn't like everything was great along the way. And I do think they did do a good job of checking themselves every once in a while and be like, yeah, we're proud of this, but like clearly we got to get better at it, or we got to do it more effectively, or like the way we did it wasn't very good and we know how to do it better moving forward. But the biggest disappointment on the year was the fact that they just got absolutely murdered on a regular basis early on in the season. And it's what ultimately led to the coaching change. And Michael Winger flat out admitted when competitiveness is supposed to be something that is core to who you are, this season was unacceptable.
The one that was most disappointing, frankly, no secret, was our competitiveness. It's one of our 5 organizational pillars, and I think that there were just far too many games that we didn't bring the level of competitiveness that we are capable of bringing, and that a team that is walking into a game trying to punch above its weight, that was really the one thing that we couldn't forfeit. And there were just too many games, too many moments, too many halves along the way where we forfeited competitiveness. And if you do that in this league, particularly when you're sort of in the cycle where we are, you're going to have a really hard time recovering. And so there were games that we didn't show up to compete, or we showed up to compete for 12 minutes or 24 minutes or whatever the case may be. And that's not what we talked about. It's not what we preach on a day-to-day basis, and it costs us a lot of games. And so on a going forward basis, that's just going to be one of the things that's going to make us better going into next season, is a renewed focus on competitiveness, teaching it, coaching it, practicing it.
One thing that I didn't ask that I wish I had, but I thought about it, was, and the reason I didn't ask it is because I don't know that they would have been able to answer it honestly. Because everybody likes Wes Unseld Jr., and they should, because Wes is a great guy. But do they wish they had fired him sooner? Ultimately, they did. They pulled the plug. But I do think that it's hard as a team, as an athlete, as players, to go into games where you know you don't have a shot and your coach is part of the reason why, because he's not giving you a shot. And whether that is Jordan Poole and the ball not being in his hands and who he's playing with and playing out of position and all those things, just feeling like you're not being set up for success, or not feeling like your coach is going to make the necessary adjustments in game, where Wes just seemed to be on autopilot. And I know he wasn't. I know he was working and he was grinding and he was trying to figure it out, but all that figuring never led to anything tangibly different. It never led to different rotations. It never led to lineup changes. And there's some element of, hey, we're trying to figure some things out. We need to not be changing things every single night, because then we don't know what's actually working versus what's random. But when you're 50 games into a season and you're miserably bad and you have multiple double-digit losing streaks, and more importantly, to the point that Michael Winger just made, you are not competitive on a regular basis. You have got to try something different. And at that point, I put that on the coach for just demoralizing the organization and the players specifically, versus, and ultimately, like, that also was a reflection on Dawkins and Winger to not step in and be like, dude, if you don't change something, you're gone, or just being like, hey, you're gone. So that is a mistake in my book for them. But at the same time, like, the players, their job is to show up every night and compete, and they didn't do that to a high enough standard. And I think that Winger and Dawkins ultimately did take responsibility for that, saying, like, we didn't do the things we needed to do, and maybe firing Wes earlier was ultimately one of them. That said, as the season went, they did get far more competitive, and I thought this was a really cool look into the ways that they can measure such things.
Some encouraging signs on that front, particularly as it relates to the second half of the season, it is undeniable that we won only 18% of our basketball games. But in the second half of the season, we won 40% of our quarters and we won 40% of our halves. That's clearly not a whole game, but we're looking for signs. And those are really encouraging signs.
It means that you found some stuff that worked. And you need to be able to find stuff that works for 48 minutes. But finding some stuff that works from a style of play, which Dawkins talked about today, the pace, they finished first in the league in pace, and how that was a good fit for their personnel, and some of the other play style things that Will Dawkins did some really, really interesting stuff when it came down to the little bit about the basketball itself on court that he talked about today, because so much of what they were talking about was big picture. But they found some stuff, and that's encouraging. Now they got to find more stuff and find better stuff, and you go from winning 40% of your quarters and halves to 40% of your games, and then hopefully you go to winning 60% of your games, 70% of your games, and you're a championship type of contender. Ultimately, though, what they have done, undoubtedly, is they've escaped the wheel of mediocrity, and that was the number one thing, and that is where so many teams get stuck because they just try to they think they're one or two players away, and in reality, they're nowhere close, and that's good. They got off the wheel of mediocrity, even if at times they did some very mediocre things this year. And stamping that out of the organization is certainly Michael Winger's number one goal, it seems, for year two.
There is no tolerance organizationally for mediocrity. There's no tolerance for shortcuts, and absolutely no forgiveness for poor effort. And so to the extent that you saw that this season, it is intolerable. And it's something that we're going to talk about with our staff and our players in the offseason, and we'll preach these things very heavily going into training camp.
I also feel like next year, they talked about the head coaching search today, and basically they said they haven't started it yet on purpose, that they haven't sat down as a group to discuss it. Candidates, there's no list, there's no nothing, because they promised Brian Keefe a distraction-free environment, and the players a distraction-free environment to conduct the rest of their season in, to be able to evaluate them moving forward. And if they were working on the side on who was going to be the next coach, which some teams do, like the Nets already have their guy, then obviously Keefe was going to have to answer questions about, well, hey, it looks like they're interviewing this person, or there's a rumor that they're interested in Coach X. And by not having those discussions, you can't leak anything from discussions that don't happen. And so Woj is stuck with nothing. And so, but when they hire that new coach, there's going to be even heavier type of collaboration, and I think a little bit more power over that coach, because it's like, hey, we picked you, as opposed to making sure that you give the space and respect to a guy you inherit in Wes Unseld Jr., and also to Brian Keefe, who, again, was on Wes's staff, even if he has probably longer histories with a guy like Winger and a guy like Dawkins, and, is there on an interim basis. Of course, the biggest issue this season on any single player was the performance of Jordan Poole, which is not said to malign Jordan. It is not said in any kind of mean-spirited way. Obviously, Jordan Poole had a bad season for most of the season, and Jordan Poole very much knows that, which is why he kept working and why he was able to, in the final half of the season, perform much better. And the final month is like a 23 points, 8 assists kind of guy, and you're going, wow, okay, Jordan Poole is not dead. The Jordan Poole that we saw helped Golden State win a championship is still in there somewhere. Look at this guy go. And so I asked, these guys today about Poole and about the turnaround and what went wrong, the slump he was in, and how ultimately he was able to pull himself out of it. And this is a bit of a long answer, but I thought it was really telling. And you might be able to hear this, but I could certainly see it being in the room. Michael Winger actually got emotional in talking about how Jordan Poole turned his season around.
Jordan he's an incredibly introspective and kind person. I don't know if you've had a lot of time to spend with him, but the Jordan that sort of generally gets written about and the Jordan that exists behind a pair of spectacles are two different people. He loves talking hoop. He loves it. And he's a really smart kid. And so he knew what he was going through early in the season. And he just kept telling us, I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do the work. The work will pay off. The work will pay off. And, he was taking darts and bullets and everything else throughout the course of the season. He just ignored it. He ignored it better than I did, quite frankly. He just kept saying, like, I'm going to work, and the work will pay off. And to your point, I mean, I'll be damned, but he had a long slump, and it was hard for him. It was hard for us to watch, not as objective observers, but as people who can just, like, reach in and, like, fix a problem for him. But he came through because he's a worker, he's a gamer, he's a hooper, super high character basketball player. And it's just, sometimes guys will surprise you by the amount of work they put in and how it pays off. And he did that. It was moving to watch him sort of come out of what he went through early in the season.
My experiences with Jordan, they were always be where your feet are. And he was really good at that. He understood that this was a phase, it was going to pass, and what was going to get him through was his consistency and his work ethic. And like Mike said, he ignored the noise better than most. I don't think what people understand is what got to him was the losing and not being competitive. It wasn't the stuff that people were saying about him, because he always worried about the end result in terms of team. How can we be better, not just me? And he had a deep passion for that. He reached out to his teammates. We would have a lot of text exchange, a lot of talks on the plane after games, and I just knew that he'd break through on that stuff. Did he have the season that he wanted from beginning to end? No. But did he finish the season on a way to give him more confidence to go into the summer and be the player we know he can be? Yeah. And again, that's how I kind of look at the season, not in just small little increments, but you break it down and then you see where you're at the end.
I think that the caricature, that's the word I'm looking for, the caricature of Jordan Poole versus the reality of Jordan Poole are just two different things. And Jordan Poole sometimes, and the problem is, sometimes Jordan Poole does play like a bit of a knucklehead basketball player. And in DC specifically, that has traditionally been matched with a bit of a knucklehead of a person. Like Nick Young was a knucklehead, to borrow from the Mike Wilbon school of vocabulary here, right? Like Nick Young took crazy shots, and Nick Young also off the court did crazy stuff. And Jordan Poole, likes fashion, and so sometimes people are like, whoa, Jordan Poole's a little out there because he wears something that's a little bit flashy or different or whatever. Whatever word you want to use for what most fashion people will call really good fashion. But you got that element of bad defense, crazy shots, passes that go to nowhere, and people just think he's kind of a doofus. And it's just not anything I've ever heard, from talking to people in Golden State to talking to people around the Wizards. And it is to a person like, no, this kid loves basketball and he works harder than anyone. And so to hear those guys talk about that, I thought was really encouraging. And to hear that Jordan blocked out the noise and was locked in a way that nobody from the outside could imagine, and frankly was better than a guy like Winger, who I think really had a tough time. He talked about this today. Had a tough time at times, canceling out the noise, whether it was about the team, whether it was about individual players, whether it was about whatever. The fact that Jordan at 24 years old was at the center of it, as the guy who has to go perform every night, was just like, I'm just going to keep working. Talk about competitiveness. That's tremendous. And ultimately it pays off in the end. But there was something structural that changed. There was undoubtedly something that was different about the Wizards post All-Star break when it comes to Jordan Poole that seemed to be ignored in those answers. I followed up on it. And I flummoxed Winger a little bit, because I don't think he knows he doesn't have the answer yet. But you got to hear his answer when it comes to the Wizards' future and how much it could involve Jordan Poole. You'll hear that next, and we'll take your calls. The Wizards' season is over. You've now heard from players on Monday. You heard from interim coach Brian Keefe. You've heard from Winger. You've heard from Dawkins. What do you make of year one, or even let's call it year zero, of the Wizards rebuild? 301-230-0980, plus Winger on the future of Jordan Poole next on the Hoffman Show. Still to come on the Hoffman Show, you will hear about the offensive line class in the upcoming 2024 NFL Draft from Mike Golic Jr. He, Logan, and I had a nice chat on Take Command. We'll let you hear part 1 of that coming up in just a little bit. Also, Aaliyah Edwards, the number 6 pick in the 2024 WNBA Draft. Washington Mystics, new forward, UConn star. We talked a little bit earlier today. Great conversation. Actually, I will say this, Ant, real quick before I get back into the Wizards. Just full rip off the Band-Aid, pull back the curtain here. I have back-to-back conversations with Aaliyah Edwards and Croy Bethune today. Aaliyah, of course, the Mystics draft pick. Croy, the 3rd overall pick in the 2024 NWSL draft, who's just crushing it so far with the Spirit. Has a couple of goals. Is just a baller. And a lot of times when I talk to young players across sports, NFL, NBA, WNBA, NWSL, men, women, whatever. Like, rookie interviews are some of my least favorite because they've been trained by, like, college SIDs to say nothing, and they're very short in their answers, and they're, like, it's not that they're not smart and thoughtful. They're told to not be smart, or they're told not to be thoughtful. They're just media trained in the worst way, and they say nothing. And they're also nervous because some of them, like, they've never really done big-time media before. And so they're often really not great interviews. These are easily the 2 best rookie interviews I've done in years. And I did them in the span of 30 minutes today. And 2 of the better athlete interviews I think we've had in a while. They were both really good. So we'll play Aaliyah a little bit later today, and then Croy will put on YouTube at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980 later today, and then we'll try to play it for you here on the radio later in the week. Spirit hosting the champion or defending champion Gotham this weekend at Audi Field. That game's on Big CBS at 1 o'clock. It's a blackout game. Should be a lot of fun down the street at Audi Field. But earlier today, on not in Southwest, went to Southeast. I might drive home through Northeast just for fun today, because then I'll hit all 4 quadrants today.
I don't know if your gas tank will like that, but
actually, that's a really good reminder. I do need to get gas.
Yeah, I don't think you should do that.
I mean, whatever. I'll make it work. Things will happen in the order they need to. But over in Southeast today, Southeast today. Talked to Michael Winger and Will Dawkins about the Wizards season and talked about Jordan Poole, and they had all these nice things to say about Jordan when it comes to his work ethic and how he turned it around. And I just kind of felt like there was an elephant in the room, which is that there was a big change with beyond his work ethic and beyond all those things that are undoubtedly true that changed Jordan Poole's season and turned it around. And by the way, that also has a big effect on decisions they make, not just for Jordan, but on Tyus Jones in the future.
The one change that did seem to be made structurally for him was putting the ball in his hands. Obviously, first the move to the bench, and then ultimately when Tyus goes out, putting the ball in his hands as the starting point guard. One, what conversations were that? Just like Brian making the decision versus you all doing that collaboratively? And then 2, Tyus is an unrestricted free agent. You guys, when not trading him, and also in the comments have said that we want him back. How do you square that of how that all could potentially work together moving forward?
That nervous laugh from Michael Winger, I wish we could show you the look on his face, because what I seem to have hit was, as they call it, a nerve.
You're hitting upon what will be a very complex conversation for us. Jordan does like having the ball in his hands, and he's really good with the ball in his hands. Tyus likes having the ball in his hands and is also very good with the ball in his hands. It is our job, along with the head coach and the coaching staff, to figure out how to make that work. Both are really good basketball players and really good people. An organization like ours, or frankly any organization, but for where we are right now, we can't have too many of those kind of guys. Tyus, to your point, he is an unrestricted free agent, and there are 29 other teams that know he's a good player and a good dude, and he's going to have a lot of options. He deserves to have those options. He deserves to have those conversations. He did express to us an interest in coming back, and we expressed to him an interest in coming back, bringing it back. We'll have those conversations in July, but I truly have no answers for you right now as to how we make all of Jordan's best and all of Tyus's best coexist. Once we have a coaching staff in place, that'll be one of the very first things that we roll up our sleeves and try to figure out.
I thought that was a refreshingly honest and interesting answer from Michael Winger, which is basically, yeah, man, we got to figure that out. We don't have a clue. And what I think is also present in that answer is a conundrum that ultimately the Wizards are going to have to figure out, which is they want to be, and they are, a people-first organization, which now makes them. That is how the Commanders are run as well. They've talked about that a lot, that it is people first. But ultimately, when you win, like, the people first has to become a prerequisite, and then you need more than just, hey, this is a good dude and a good player. You need, like, this is a good dude who fits with our basketball team and how we want to play basketball. And this is the conundrum for the Wizards, is they have two guys with very different skill sets, but the very same needs. They need to play with the ball in their hands. They need to be surrounded by bigger people to help them on the defensive end. And they are good people who work hard and can have some leadership qualities. I think Tyus's are obviously much more well-developed. Tyus is also much older than Jordan, which seems like a relevant plot point here. So you can't, like, from a basketball standpoint, you cannot possibly move forward with the both of them. And I at that point wonder if we look back in July, once they've had those conversations, and Michael Winger is willing to admit, even if not on the record, that they might have made a mistake in not trading Tyus Jones at the trade deadline, and that they ultimately let him walk for nothing. Or can they get something in a sign and trade? I do think that is certainly a possibility. And Tyus, I think, wants to do right by the Wizards, because I think Tyus really enjoyed his time here. I think Tyus wants to be, Tyus straight up said, like, I want to explore staying here. And he knows that they're not going to be good anytime soon. He knows that he could go somewhere tomorrow and compete for a championship. And that speaks incredibly loudly about the environmental piece that they talked about, that we played for you earlier. That one of the things Will Dawkins highlighted that we didn't actually play for you was that the environmental improvements they made to this organization, where guys enjoyed showing up to work, but also that their families were taken care of, and some of those types of things. The fact that Tyus Jones is like, I know, Tyus is not stupid. He knows that he could go sign with the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Warriors, I guess maybe not the Warriors, because they're, who knows what their future is. But certainly, like, a team like the Nuggets, a team like the Celtics, and, like, be the backup point guard on a championship team and be competing for rings tomorrow. He could go back to Minnesota, who drafted him, where he's from, and that tried to trade for him at the deadline, but ultimately wouldn't give up a first for him. And so Will said no. Like, he could go there and he could play with Anthony Edwards and be competing for championships next year. And he's like, I'm going to keep the Wizards on the list. That speaks very well to what Washington is doing. But it does get down to the nitty-gritty of the point, which is ultimately, when do you stop worrying about, we have enough good people, and not that you want bad people, but that good people who come to work every day with the right attitude is not enough, that they actually have to be able to play good basketball together. And I think that is ultimately what Michael Winger, as the lead architect of this, and Will Dawkins as his side-by-side lieutenant, are going to struggle with over the next couple of months, specifically when it comes to Poole and Jones. They don't want to give up either of them. Poole is the obvious one to hang on to because he's younger, has a higher upside, and he's also contractually here versus Tyus, who's not. And you can just let walk and take the cap space or whatever. But that is the existential question. And what they might decide is that time to make that cut is not now. That just re-sign Tyus. They'll figure it out. They'll play Jordan off the bench. They'll play maybe Tyus is like off the bench and they're like, hey, dude, this is what you're going to be on a championship team probably. Or, if there's injuries, whatever. Like, we'll figure it out. But we're going to trade you probably at the trade deadline, but we're going to give you you like being here, we're going to give you another 6 months to a year. And whether you trade him at the deadline or you trade him next summer, you just figure it out then, because right now, having him around as a leader and having him around as a guy who you can trust is more important than the fit from a basketball perspective at this stage of the rebuild. That is ultimately what they have to decide. The new coaching staff will have an input on that. But it was refreshing, again, to use that word, in a way, to see Michael Winger just kind of go like, yeah, dude, you hit the nail on the head, and I don't have a good answer for you, because I don't know that there necessarily is one with where they are right now, which maybe that's a criticism in its own right, or maybe it's just kind of the facts of where they are and what you care about when you're this early in a rebuilding process with the lofty type of goals of consistent competitiveness that they ultimately have. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, NFL Draft, offensive lineman. We talk about it with Mike Golic Jr. Next, though, Mystics top draft pick Aaliyah Edwards joins us on the Hoffman Show.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Of course, always on the free Odyssey app and on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see the newest Washington Mystic, Aaliyah Edwards, 6th overall pick in the WNBA draft. Aaliyah, congratulations. Is it weird still being introduced as Washington Mystics forward, Aaliyah Edwards?
It's weird. I'm getting used to it, though. I love the name.
Yeah. UConn forward, of course, for 4 years. We'll talk about that experience in a second. And I want to start actually first, Aaliyah, just kind of the WNBA draft process is so unique. Like, we've been talking on our show about the NFL draft for what feels like forever. It's this 3-month-long, 4-month-long thing. The NBA draft is a couple of months. You guys are so tight from the end of your season to the draft. Do you even have any interaction with the WNBA teams, like with a Mike Tebow, your general manager, Eric Tebow, your coach? Like, do you have anything, or do they just kind of watch the tape and go, all right, we're gonna take Aaliyah?
I wish it was that easy, but it's not. It's a very condensed process, a quick turnaround. So I finished my last game at the Final Four, maybe about a week and a half ago now.
Yeah.
But right after that, I was thrown right into the process, trying to get a fit, first of all. Having interviews. I spoke with the team here at Mystics, and just right fit for me. But ultimately, you never really know until your name's called, and that's a special moment. So it was long days, long process, but in the end, it really worked out.
Yeah, for sure. So you're Canadian, for those that don't know, and I think it's been really interesting watching on the NBA side. There's just been such an influx of Canadian players, from Jamal, Shea, on down the list, kind of the Vince Carter generation. How much did Vince and kind of what happened, what we've seen, books written, documentaries made about it on the men's side. Did that also have an influence on women's basketball in Canada?
I think it had a good influence that we don't really talk about or speak on, because it really brought light to Canada and to just how basketball dominant we are across my country. And it started with him, then it leaked over into the senior women's national team in Canada. And I think, especially for young women, looking up and having mentors and people to just aspire to be like and be in their position really helped push the basketball over the top for us. And I know me growing up, we didn't really have anything about the Raptors and watching the NBA, but over the course of the years, we started getting more resources to have streaming services to watch the W, to tune into NCAA. So I'm grateful for the growth that we were able to do for women's basketball in Canada, and for me to kind of be the pivotal point of that. I'm grateful.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, you played on the Olympic team in 2020, youngest ever to play on the Canadian senior national team in a major tournament. Just a slight flex.
Yeah,
let me give you the moment here then. Like, who are some of your heroes that you got to watch growing up that don't get, we talk about Vince because like he is this overwhelming figure and they make the documentaries, but you mentioned like all of a sudden on the women's side there are people too. Like, who are some of those heroes that you looked up to?
I would throw out like Kia Nurse, Natalie Achanwa, Bridget Carlton. They were those three that I looked up to. Obviously followed Kia with UConn. So we got the blue ties there. And she was a really big mentor for me transitioning from high school to college, because she lived through it. She was already introduced into that environment. So for me stepping in, I kind of had some comfort, but ultimately you can't really prepare for the great Coach Gino. So, but once I got there, grateful for the opportunity and everything that I was able to learn from him and underplaying him. And I think it just prepared me for being a Washington Mystics today.
Yeah, Aaliyah Edwards is our guest here on the Hoffman Show. Yeah, Kia was at UConn back when I was at Syracuse, and so back in the Big East days, conference rivals.
That was crazy. I heard the stories.
Yeah, I actually did play-by-play on the Syracuse side for Maya's senior day, and I don't remember what the final numbers were, but it was UConn a lot, Syracuse a little.
Right?
Yeah, that was kind of unfortunately. Syracuse obviously done a great job with the program in the last couple of years, but I miss those Big East rivalries back in the day. So you mentioned Gino. I got to ask just very simply, what is your favorite Gino or Emma story? You have 4 years of them. What's your favorite go-to Gino story?
I don't know if I have just one favorite. I think just when I think of Coach, obviously I think of everything on the court, but off the court, just chilling at his house. He would invite the team all the time, and we'd watch basketball or just break bread and just have great memories at his house. He's like a big grandpa to all of us. He's the type when he's taking a picture on his phone that he takes it like this. So
for the radio audience that won't be able to see what Aaliyah just did, it was
right.
like real squinty, the pointer finger
Yeah,
doing the work.
Pointer finger clicking the button. But no, that's who I think of Coach, especially just a loving man for his players and for the program. But no, he's great.
When you talk to Kia, or if you have a chance to talk to like Sue or Dee or any like the people that have been there 10, 20 years ago, is that what they say too, or do you think he's softened with age?
No, they are the first ones to say that he's softened with age. I think, this generation, he always throws that out here, and I've been coaching for 40 years now, and you guys changed so much. But no, he definitely did loosen up a little bit, but his drive, his passion, and commitment to not only the players but to the program has never changed, and that will never change, I feel like. So, but yeah, I think that my class especially, we gave him some youth.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned your class. Nika Mule goes through this process with you. You guys were on the podium together draft night. Obviously, we all saw Paige in the crowd there cheering you guys on.
Proud mom.
Proud mom, Paige Beckers. What was it like having them be able to go through and specifically Nika? We all talk about Paige because of who Paige is, but specifically Nika to go literally through this process from the end of that Final Four to being drafted with you.
It means a lot. It's just really special. I think it just speaks to the relationships and the memories that you can create within this beautiful sport. I actually knew Nika before coming into UConn, and we played at NBA Academy basketball at Borders together. We were actually roommates. So we already
cool.
had been going into college and then spending 4 years together, 4 tough, challenging years together, and accomplished a lot. And to both achieve our dreams on the next level and able to say that we did the same draft year, it's beautiful.
Yeah, when you think about your rookie year and what's to come, and it's always to me so crazy how they have it for y'all, where it's season and then all of a sudden you're into season again. But have you had a chance to think about like what you want this rookie season to look like, and what goals you have, if any, at this point for your year one with the Mystics?
Yeah, my mindset going into this rookie year is just to challenge myself each and every day, but also give myself grace. I think that I've been for 4 years now waiting for this moment, so I'm not going to let this moment pass and just sink in it, but actually take something out of it, and to find a new home in DC and with this new Mystics family. I'm super excited. I feel like it's just the right fit for me. Love the team, love the organization and what they're about. So I'm grateful to tap into that and leave my impact here.
Have you spent any time in DC really before?
Only for basketball, but
Okay.
I'm
So-
excited to kind of see the city.
I was gonna say, so
and,
what are you excited? I mean, there's obviously like the classic touristy stuff, the monuments and all that.
Right.
Is there anything, whether it's on that list or anything else that you've heard about the city that you are really excited to explore?
I don't know. I think just like tapping into the community more. You only hear about the Washington and the monuments and all that side of things, but to kind of see like what the really people believe in, their values, and kind of what makes DC is really what the people and what they bring to it. So I'm excited to tap into the community space in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I learned when I moved here was this, like the city, which is like the government and all that stuff. And then there's the town, which is exactly what you're talking about, the people in the town. The town is certainly a beautiful place. You mentioned the UConn connection that you've had with so many people that have been in the league. You got one on the Mystics with you. You got Big Mama Steph there. You got Stephanie Gilson. What did you hear from her once you got drafted, and how nice is it to have a familiar face as you embark on this rookie season?
It's super nice to have a familiar face. Obviously, Blue bleeds all the way into the W, so that's beautiful to have. And just someone who's known where I've come from and how it is in college, and to kind of transition into this space and have someone to lean on with Steph. She's just a great person, great player, but I think I don't know. It's going to be – she gives me mom vibes, and I love that.
The nickname's earned is what you're saying?
Yeah, don't get me in trouble now. It's always good to have a vet that you can just lean on and soak information on. But yeah, it's going to be cool.
Aaliyah, congratulations again. Welcome to DC. It's going to be really fun watching you play, and we appreciate your time here on the radio show.
Thank you so much.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Just realized for the streaming live on YouTube part, I put up a new graphic with today's date, and it's yesterday's date. It's not April 16th. We didn't just time travel. It's April 17th. And that's all right. Because that means that Take Command is out now with a fresh episode in your podcast feeds, starring Mike Golic Jr. Gojo played offensive line, of course, at Notre Dame. Now does Golic and Gojo, or Gojo and Golic, I should say, on the DraftKings network. I don't know how he got top billing over his dad. His dad is only a radio Hall of Famer, of course, Mike Golic Sr. But when I got together with Mike at the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, I was really impressed with his football acumen. Obviously, he talks about football on the radio and talks about sports on the radio, but he's just so entertaining that you forget this guy really, really, really knows ball, and he studies ball, and he actually calls games during the season on the college side of it. So really, really great chat with me, him, and Logan, and here's part one of that conversation for you. You don't even have to pull out your favorite podcast app and load up Take Command. Nope, we're just going to hit play on it here on the radio, and off you go, part one with Gojo. Mike.
It's time. Take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in to Take Command. That is Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. And in just a moment, we'll be joined by Mike Golic Jr., of course. Gojo and Golic on the DraftKings Network. He's a college football analyst as well. Played O-line at Notre Dame. I said all that, I think, in the intro to Mike, Logan. We just actually got done with the conversation. That's how this works sometimes. But I feel like we enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yo, he's fantastic. He's just super energetic and gregarious, and I don't know what I was expecting, but he comes from this long line of radio personalities, TV personalities, and that comes across. And his passion for football is pretty fantastic. So I came out of there just being like, wow, dude loves ball and dude loves to talk. He's perfect for what he's doing right now. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I remember talking ball with him at the Super Bowl and just being like, wow, yeah, he's the radio guy. Because obviously his dad, hosted mornings on ESPN Radio, Mike and Mike, for 20 years. And then, Mike was a part of that show at the end before they split, and ultimately now are doing thing together on the DraftKings Network. And you think of all the fun bits and all the wacky stuff they did, which was great. It's the show I honestly grew up on. But I got done talking ball with him. I was like, oh, this dude really, really knows ball. And so pleasure to have him on the show. And we're going to talk some O-line with Mike / we already did. And here's that conversation. Our guest today is Mike Golic Jr. Of course, you can watch him with his dad on the DraftKings Network, their awesome show. You might have seen Mike also with me out in Vegas on Radio Row. Mike, I feel like we must be more rested for this than we were for that.
Yeah, we have set the bar criminally low, if that's our baseline for existence. So yes, feeling a lot more rested and recovered, put some distance between us and Vegas Super Bowl, only in time to start hydrating now for New Orleans Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, Mike was literally my last guest of the week, and we were both. So that was a good time. Mike, of course, played offensive line at Notre Dame. So we're going to dive into the O-lineman a bit today. And I guess kind of the big question around the O-line and the Commanders is how aggressive do they get in terms of going back into the first round potentially from one of those picks at 36 or 40, as opposed to waiting for the kind of player that would be available there. So Mike, for you, how deep is your top team? Because I feel like that's the kind of the start when we look at the 2024 draft.
Yeah, I guess I would say looking at the guys that I would absolutely be like, man, if you got this dude in the first round, you would be a home run threat. He would be a day one impact starter for you right now. I'd probably say that group for me looks like Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu from Penn State. I say Joe Alt from Notre Dame for those maybe unfamiliar there. Talisi Fuad, Oregon State, Troy Fautanu from Washington. I would throw in also in that group Graham Barton out of Duke, whether you see him as a center or a guard. Jackson Powers Johnson, again, whether you see him as a center or a guard in there. And then I would say even the guys I would understand going in the first round based on potential would probably be Amarius Mims out of Georgia. J.C. Latham's going to go in that range too, who I also think would be good. And then from there, for me, it's probably a rung down where you get to Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU, Roger Rosengardner, guys like that. So I'd say my top tier probably ends with like, hey, you know what? I can get looking at Amarius Mims, taking that dude where you would have to go probably back up into the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing about that group is, so to me, I totally agree with your group. I'd probably throw Tyler Guyton in there just for the Amarius Mims principle, where it's like you get this big athletic dude who's, very hyper talented. But what's the difference in your estimation between that first group and that second group? I know the first group's probably like day one starter potentially. And then how long with that second group are you looking at a guy potentially starting for you? Because that's really the $1 million question for Washington at the moment, who's in desperate need of a left tackle.
A lot of the rest of that group, Jordan Morgan probably a little bit closer in that group, a guy that maybe it doesn't always look perfect technique-wise, but gets him blocked and is a big, the classic dancing bear in the way he moves, just a big, large, incredible athlete. Guyton in that range too, and I think the discrepancy for me with him and Mims is just Mims, you can see a little bit more of the pedigree there. You can see the body angles. Technically, he's not super far off. It's just kind of like the same discussion in a weird way we had around Anthony Richardson coming out of Florida, where it's, hey, the bones are actually really good. Like, this isn't just a big athlete playing the position. There's some stuff structurally in the way you build the house that looks good. He just hasn't played enough football, and Anthony Richardson obviously ran into that problem getting hurt. I think Mims is the same way, and Guyton probably is too. It's just he was doing things schematically at Oklahoma that I just think are a little bit outside his game. He's so long, he's so raw. And so I think in this day and age in the NFL, this all comes down to the question that everyone's got to ask themselves as a team is, do we have the offensive line coach capable of developing this kind of prospect? Because I think now everyone talks about the O-line problem. To me, it's just a time problem. You don't have as much time on field with these guys, and you need impact sooner. And so there's a premium paid on dudes that come out technically closer to ready, guys that can go out there and start for you day one and aren't going to be overwhelmed by what they see coming at them from the other side, while they're also trying to hone some of the parts of their game, hone some of the different parts of the most unnatural skill set on the field, offensive line and defensive back, the guys that got to go backwards and block the best athletes on the planet. So I think those other guys, honestly, it depends on your coaching. If you're a place like the Tennessee Titans and you're bringing in, Callahan, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, you're allowed to move a little bit differently than most, where, hey, no, you got a coach that's a kingmaker. This guy can absolutely get a guy that might be a little bit more toolsy than technique-wise, ready to go in a hurry. Everyone else kind of has to be honest with themselves, and I think that's at times where teams run into trouble.
So let me ask you both this on like a big macro question, because this will stun you. I don't know a ton about offensive line play relative to a lot of the rest of football. Considering you both have met me in person, that's not stunning. But we see a lot of these guys with the position flex. You mentioned Barton. He could play center. He could play guard. He could play tackle in the eyes of some people. But you also have a guy like Talisi Fuaga, who inside, outside, depending on who you ask. But you even have a guy like Guyton, who's definitely a tackle, but he's only played right tackle. And if you're drafting a guy in the first round, often you're looking at a left tackle. I know from like a sports performance standpoint how you look at some of that stuff, but having lived it, Logan is a tight end, Mike, you as a lineman, like how hard is it to move around and how much does that impact what you think of these guys as prospects?
Yeah, I can just say from being a rotational guy that had to kind of make a college career until I was a starter on being the guy that could play the inside three. And then when I got a couple of shots in NFL training camp, like part of it was moving out to tackle when I was in Pittsburgh. Certainly it's moving around along there. It's a really difficult transition. Zach Martin did such a disservice for this when he came out of Notre Dame and went from left tackle to right guard, because having to flip everything like that in your head is something not everyone's capable of. I think it's super individual. And so, Logan, I don't know how you see it there, but that's something for me that, you love to see if you're going to take a guy like Joe Alt's a good example. People are worried about the Chargers potentially taking him because they've got Rashawn Slater there. Well, Joe had a bunch of reps at, tackle over, getting down in a right-hand stance, game reps against NC State, against Ohio State this year, which also means he did it in practice, which is more than most guys that are top 10 draft pick studs at those positions usually have. So you've at least got something to go on there. For everyone else, though, it's going to be a lot about a guy's individual aptitude.
No, I totally agree. I think it is, people say it's like throwing a baseball like with the wrong hand. I don't know if it's that extreme, but it is very, very challenging. As a tight end, like you have to get in multiple stances and do different things. And even in that context, I feel more comfortable pass setting with my left foot in front, like just from a left-footed stagger. Like there's guys that are going to have those individual kind of quirks and nuances. I think, like with a guy like Tyler Guyton, however, I look at the athlete and I say to myself, he is so raw. Like he's kind of like a ball of clay, right? In some ways, it's a benefit if you're trying to move him around the front because it's like you don't have any bad habits. And I think the athletic profile there is something that gives you a lot of confidence. And again, it's a little bit of a gamble. It's like some guys take to it really well. Some guys look awesome and some guys can't do it. And it's like, I'd feel more confident if Bill Callahan was my offensive line coach. You know what I mean? And I think the other thing I'd look at too is just how they're being repped in practice. Like over the course of my career, college, NFL, and I'm sure Mike can speak to this too, is there's coaches that demand, even if you're the guy, that you play multiple spots in the offensive line. Oh, hey, the second group's in, you're the left tackle, you're going to play right tackle this series. And so if at Notre Dame, for example, they're really dogmatic about making sure there's a pretty consistent rotation, I feel very confident about certain guys making it. But again, that's stuff that is part of the scouting process, understanding the character and understanding what the system that they're coming from. So I totally agree with Mike. It is very individual, but there are certain qualities that you say, well, maybe that this works for this individual specifically. So.
Yeah. Mike, do you have anything to tack on the end there?
No, I think all that's spot on. And I think the point about, and that's kind of what I always go back and forth on in my head is, hey, if you get a guy that's young without a lot of reps and is pretty raw, do you want to err on what he's most comfortable with because he's still learning? Or do you take that time and say, hey, if I've got a good teacher and we've got a great athlete here, he's going to be able to absorb that better than most. And I tend to side with the latter on that. I do think that's kind of the way I'd look at it is, hey, if you've got a guy that doesn't have a ton of starts under his belt, is more of that ball of clay, then you take your opportunity, as opposed to, some teams are going to flirt with, hey, are we going to take a vet and try and move him over on the other side? It's like, that guy could potentially have hundreds, maybe more snaps of fired all in that way at the NFL level. And that's the last thing you'd want to mess with, because it's the thing all the time you see in offensive line play where a guy gets hurt and they'll bring in a guy who's a backup rotational player, but instead of putting him into the spot where you had a guy hurt, they'll move somebody else who is a starter to that spot and they'll put him in the spot he's most comfortable in. Now you've made two positions worse, as opposed to just having one position that you've got to guard here. And I've always thought that that's kind of a suboptimal way to do things. And so this is kind of the same case where, hey, if you got a young guy that you can make a little bit uncomfortable, as opposed to taking your vet and making him a little bit worse too, that's probably the route you want to go.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask, because I think that's 100% right. I think the other thing I wanted to ask is, like, of that second tier of guys, the Guytons, the Jordan Morgans, the Kingsley Sue-Matias, Patrick Pauls, Kieran Amadiji, Roger Rosengart, who in that group do you think is the most ready to start at left tackle right now? Because, I have my thoughts on this, and it's probably a little unconventional, but like you said, all those guys feel a little bit project-y. So,
yeah, all do. I would probably, and talking to guys that I trust, I'm probably a little lower on Guyton than most. The answer is probably him in terms of what you want, just because the tools are so ridiculous and he is such a great athlete. You count on, hey, you're also coming from a program, I don't want to slight, we've talked about pedigree here. Bill Bedenbaugh and that Oklahoma offensive line program, that's pedigree. There have been quality dudes that have come out of that program. That's been a Joe Moore Award-winning group for the offensive line in college. So there's certainly, stuff that you can hang your hat on from that bunch. But it probably him, maybe Jordan Morgan too, because again, I think the premium is always just get him blocked, and he's a guy that can do that with some incredible size and athleticism.
Yeah, another guy that I just want to run by you is the Roger Rosengart. I know he played right tackle, but when I watch him, I think his foot dexterity is pretty fantastic. And I think one of the traits when you're looking at offensive linemen, or at least when I look at offensive linemen, is how are your feet? And, if you don't have the length, do you have the feet? And Amarius Mims, like you talked about, is this guy with tremendous length, and he kicks well, but his feet are kind of slow, but it all works because of his frame. And I think Roger Rosengartner works the other way. His feet are so good, it makes his frame work. Do you think he could make the transition to left tackle? I know he played a little bit early at UW, but I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Roger's interesting just because I'm curious. I know he's had a little late surge. Mel Kiper had him sneak into the first round in his latest mock, and I loved him. He was so interesting to study opposite Troy Fautanu, who I think's, quite honestly, best days are at guard or even center. I've been talking about that with a lot of people. Troy Fautanu at center, to me, looks like a future All-Pro. Everywhere else, I think, can be a very good player, but I'd love to see him all the way down and inside and get snapping. But him opposite Roger Rosengartner, both very good, like technically sound athletes. You mentioned the feet and stuff with Roger. It just gets a little bit high, and I do wonder going to the next level with that kind of anchor, not being the biggest guy in the world, what that would look like against NFL quality rushers early on in his career. But he would be a guy that, like, again, coming from that program, really good, well-coached unit in Washington there. I think he could have a shot, certainly. He might be one I think ultimately you'd be able to get outside of the first round, but if you really felt the need, could certainly be a dude.
The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. He said, "Woof." Not like I say that every time we come back on the show, Ant. I feel like sometimes you just get a little too comfortable. You got to get your competitive level up, competitiveness level up. You want to just cancel this segment?
Am
I malfunctioning? Am I like just someone plug me back in?
You got to get your wits about you, real quick though. There it is right there.
I don't have any wit. Oh. I don't have any Joe wit, if you will. Get it? I made a joke. That's where I'm at right now. That's really the level that I'm operating at. All right, we're back. That's all we needed. We just need a little, maybe a little.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
No, because they weren't words, Craig. You host a radio show. Spit it out. All right, let's go. Tonight, Eastern Conference, you got the playoffs, or the play-in, I should say, in the NBA. You got Heat 76ers coming up at 7 o'clock. You got Hawks and Bulls at 9:30. The Bulls are a miracle team that they are there. They have so many freaking injuries. It is ridiculous that they are here. It is even more ridiculous in a way that they are favored. To me, before we get to the kind of the big one, which is Heat Sixers, and I do think whoever loses that game can easily win on and will win on Friday and ultimately wind up being the 8th seed. But when it comes to Hawks and Bulls, I kind of think the game is somewhat as simple as, is DeMar DeRozan the best player on the floor or is Trae Young the best player on the floor? If one of them has a night, I think the other team doesn't have enough to overcome it unless their star also has a night, and that level is very close. But I don't think the game is actually much more complex than that.
To an extent, I think the Bulls have a little bit, like a tad bit more star power with them. They got Vucevic. They got Kobe White, who's having a breakout year. He's going to be in the running for most improved player. I think the Bulls go out and win this game, but I don't know. Like, they have overcome a lot of injuries this season to be in this position, I guess. I don't really know.
Yeah. Real quick, Trae's not out for this game. I didn't just say something really dumb because he hadn't played he didn't play. I mean, the thing
came back.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. But he didn't come back against the Pacers in the season finale when they lost 157-115.
Yeah.
This team has lost 6 in a row. Not very good. Now, granted, those losses have come at Dallas, at Denver, against the Heat. They did lose a 1-point game to the Hornets. Yikes. At Minnesota, then at Indiana. But, yeah, this Atlanta team, I mean, the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray thing just didn't work.
Yeah, Trae is going to be gone.
So Chicago, as you mentioned, they've got a more cohesive unit. They just need some other pieces to add to it. Kobe White coming on has been big for them. Definitely going to be an interesting one. That's the late game at 9:30. The haymakers start, though, 7 o'clock, Heat and Sixers. If it wasn't Miami's playoff pedigree, I don't know how you even think about picking them. But they're them, and it's April. And that's really is it. Because if Philly plays up to their potential, with Joel being Joel, this is a walk, not a walk, but this is a win for Philadelphia. The game's in Philly. They have the best player. Maxi's been awesome. On down the list. But the Heat have played really well as of late. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They just beat the Raptors back-to-back to close out the season, which is kind of a wacky bit from a scheduling standpoint. They did, however, one of those losses was to Philly, a 109-105 loss in March. But all in all, I just think that this is a bad matchup for Miami. Philly is bigger, and that's where a lot of times Miami will beat some teams up. Is they have not? It's not necessarily they have a great big, although Bam's a great big, but they have positional size, and Joel just erases all of that single-handedly, and they don't have a good matchup for him, and that sometimes is all you need for a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, I just hate that these two teams have to play against one another. I think definitely a healthy Joel Embiid, even though he did sort of kind of tweak his knee. I think that's something to monitor tonight.
Yeah.
If he'll be able to complete the game, I hope he does. But it'll be fascinating if the Heat go out here and surprise everybody and win tonight, and then the Sixers end up having to play the second game, and they get matched up with the Celtics. I don't like. I think I like the fact that the Heat and the 76ers are in this situation just because the first round is super juicy now. You got some Heat who we know is really good in the playoffs, and then you also got the 76ers with a healthy Joel Embiid. If I'm one of those top seeds, I would hate to be in that position.
I would hate to have Philly in the first round.
Yeah.
Because the only reason they're where they are is because Joel got hurt. Joel Embiid was having the most efficient season since Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt's back in the Wilt has fake stats days because none of the stats look real. They weren't actually fake. They just look fake because how does someone actually average 50 points and 30 rebounds in a season? And that's what Wilt did. There was one season where he played 48 and a half minutes a game. He played every single game, or basically every single minute of every single game, plus some overtime. It was stupid what he did back in the day from a statistical standpoint. And Joel was averaging like more points per minute than that version of Wilt. And then he got hurt. And so now you're congrats, you're the 2 seed. Or if they lose tonight, it's a 1-game situation. And Miami's give a bleep level is real high. Their competition level or compete level, real high. And if they don't win that game, the Sixers don't, and they win on Friday, Boston, Philly in the first round is going to be bananas. That should be the Eastern Conference Finals, in my opinion.
Yep.
Instead, it could be a first-round matchup. What happened last night between the Lakers and Pelicans? We'll talk about LeBron still somehow being LeBron. Zion's unfortunate night, and his status has been announced for the second game for the Pelicans after their loss. Is he going to play on Friday? And is the Warriors dynasty officially over? All of that next as we wrap up our final half hour of the Hoffman Show. Is the Warriors dynasty officially over? It's the hot question around the NBA today. We'll tackle it in about 8 minutes here on the Hoffman Show. First, though, the Lakers move on. They are the 7th seed. They will get the Nuggets. What a first-round matchup that is. Rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals. And watching that game last night, what was so cool to watch is the stars said, we're on stage, let's dance. And to watch Zion Williamson take the challenge of guarding LeBron James, and just as impressively, because Zion's not the best defender, right? But to be like, it's time, I'm our best shot, I'm strong enough to deal with this guy, I'm one of like 5 guys on the planet that can say that, I'm going to give it my all. And for LeBron, at 111 years old, to say, I got Zion, and for pretty much most of the night when they're both on the floor, for them to take on that challenge of guarding each other was what NBA basketball at its best is, which is the world's best basketball players who are all elite competitors going, I don't care if I get embarrassed. I'm not saving any energy. Any of the other excuses why on a night-to-night basis that doesn't happen. It's like, look, in the regular season, the point is to win as many games as possible, and that doesn't mean burning yourself out every single night. But in what is not a do-or-die game, because it's the 7-8 game, and the winner gets the 7 seed, the winner gets to play again on Friday. But like, hey, if we win this, we get some rest, and we can save up for the playoffs. So kind of a do-or-die type of game to be like, no, it's all about tonight. We're all 100% in. Especially when there was this narrative that the Lakers would tank that game because they wanted to avoid the Nuggets. Like, that was awesome. And more so than any of the X's and O's, and more so than any of the things that happened last night, and obviously we need to talk about Zion's injury, that to me was my favorite thing as a basketball fan watching last night, Anthony, was that those two stars took on the challenge. And then to cherry on top, the biggest play of the game is Anthony Davis getting an offensive rebound and drawing a foul late that essentially seals it for the win for LA.
I was definitely excited to see the Pelicans, come out and throw the first punch essentially after getting destroyed, 2 nights ago. But yeah, I think everything that was on full display yesterday was playoff basketball. Like, they all wanted it all. I didn't necessarily sense that the Lakers, were trying to duck smoke or duck, playing the Nuggets in the first round. They wanted to go out there and win. And I think with the Lakers, their success anyway is going to hinge upon Anthony Davis and LeBron James' health. So being able to, rest these next 3 days, that's pivotal for them. That's like paramount. And I think you'd rather, face this Nuggets team early on, because guess what? If you get it out the way, as opposed to, having to worry about them down the road where you're already battered and bruised. And also the Nuggets were well rested last year. I want to say they swept their first 2 rounds. So
I think you're right.
I think if you get this matchup out of the way early, and also when you're going to have the most rest, because you got to squeeze in so many games in the first round.
That's enough, Lakers.
I'm just saying.
Get it out of the way. Like, it's one thing to say. It's one thing to say.
Their best chance is to play now than later.
From a phrasing standpoint, it is one thing to say, I would rather play them early than late if I know I got to play them. But to be like, I'd rather just get it out of the way early.
I'm just saying.
Really?
Their best chance is now. It's not going to be down the road. It's not going to be.
Okay. That is the more inbounds way to put that. Ridiculous phrasing. I gotta get it out of the way.
All right, man. No. Not too much on me. I might got a little jersey on at this, but.
A LeBron jersey?
So you're asking too many questions, Craig.
You opened up a door. My reporter instincts kicked in. You opened a door. I walked through it. I do think that it is obviously tremendously unfortunate that Zion gets hurt late in this game. I mean, Shaq did the thing that I hate that Shaq does the most at halftime. If you want to be a superstar, big fella, you give me 20 in the first half. You got to go give me 20 more in the second. I hate that because it's not about what Shaq wants. It is about what Shaq wants. But he freaking did it. Like, Zion goes out and is just as dominant. He's just going at LeBron, going at AD. This is a guy that doesn't shoot from the outside. He's attacking the rim, and he's reliant on moving with and without the ball. And he just is able to create blow-bys. He's able to manipulate screens and get in the lane and hit these whether it's layups or floaters or dunks, or he's a great cutter, obviously, and is a great lob threat. There's a couple times he gets behind LeBron, and he's just playing in the biggest game of his NBA life in a season where he played 70 of the 82 games, by far a career high, to in a moment where he has the biggest basket of his life to, I believe, tie the game late, or to pull them within 2 late.
I think that tied it.
I think it tied it at 93, if I'm remembering correctly. To come down and be like, my hamstring. Shoot. And then he's done. And the Lakers are able to take it home without Zion on the floor. All of a sudden, CJ McCollum's got to run the offense. And I do think it's weird that Brandon Ingram was on the bench for a lot of that stretch. And I know he's coming back from injury, but at some point, you just got to be like, that dude's my all-star. My other all-star just left. Like, B.I., it's on you, man. Like, you get paid a lot of money, and this is why. Go win us a basketball game, kid. And it does show you the difference between a Brandon Ingram level superstar and a LeBron level superstar, even at this stage of LeBron superstardom. The ability to take the game. And I was talking about this with some folks after the Wizards press conference today in regard to comments that Kyle Kuzma made on Monday. And Kuz talked about, this is about to get real nerdy, Ant, but it is what it is, because it's factual. Kyle Kuzma said on Monday that he didn't realize like the shape and conditioning you need to be in to be a superstar. That like he was in good shape this year, and then you realize the burden that being the number one has is even higher than being in really good NBA shape if you're not the guy. And I was thinking about those comments and some of the stuff that Winger and Dawkins said today, and I was talking with someone, and I was like, I actually wonder if Kyle's wrong on that, and that it's not actually about his physical conditioning that needs to be at a different level, but his mental, his neural load. His central nervous system had to make so many decisions in a game this year. And because of that, he felt tired at the end of them because he wasn't neurologically conditioned. And the reason I bring that up with LeBron is all LeBron James has done is make correct decisions for 20 years in the NBA. And at the end of these games, he is still as sharp as he has ever been. And that is not how that's supposed to work. The fact that his body has been able to keep up, and he's not what he used to be. He has finally lost a couple of steps. And it is very clear that when you watch him now compared to what he used to be, even though he's still in the upper echelon of NBA athletes at this quote-unquote diminished state. But his mind is still so sharp. And his ability to continually make the correct decisions is what I think is truly remarkable and what gives them a chance. And it's what I thought would continue to give Steph Curry a chance, and does, I think, still continue to give Steph Curry a chance for as long as he is playing, because he is someone who can manipulate and dominate a game. But Steph Curry, Anthony, needs some help. And the question du jour, which is French for question of the day. Actually, it's half French because question is an English word. The question of the day in the NBA is the Warriors dynasty over? And I just think finally even I, someone who has resisted this at every turn, have to say the answer is yes. And does that mean that Steph Curry has won his last title? Not necessarily. But the dynasty, as in it is powered by Steph, Clay, and Draymond, is just done because Draymond and Clay are not the players that they used to be. And obviously Clay is not as bad as he was last night, where he's 0 for everything, 0 points, 0 for 10 from the field. Just a goose egg from one of the most clutch players of the last decade and a half. Guy who has ice in his veins. And he's not that either, but he's not reliable, even in a big spot. And that change means that it's over.
Yeah, I feel as though it's over as well. I do think there's a possibility, but it's a very slim possibility that Clay returns. If he's willing
should also
to,
mention Clay's a free agent.
Yeah, if he's willing to take a super pay cut. But as far as the rest of the Warriors go, they do have to get younger. I feel as though they have to figure out what they want to do with Wiggins necessarily, because the last season and a half he hasn't been he hasn't been the same Wiggins that helped them win the championship. So I think they got some retooling to do, not necessarily rebuilding, some retooling to do to figure out what's going to help Steph. They already paid Draymond, so I think he'll be there as well. But I think next year, and just like thinking about who Draymond is to the team, he has to be able to, stay on the floor. Because a lot of people want to blame Steve Kerr, but I'm going to say a lot of it has to do with Draymond missing all those games all that time. I think that messed up the chemistry. And also, when he's on the floor defensively, they're just so much better.
That's the thing, right? Is the reason that during the season you're not willing to say it's dead is because they'd hit these stretches where they look like them. And you're like, oh, God, if they can do this in the playoffs, like it's on. But the thing is, that's what happens when you get older. That's what happens when you're great and your greatness starts to diminish. It doesn't all go at once. The Monstars don't come and take your powers. You just all of a sudden can't do it night to night consistently anymore. You kind of have to wake up feeling good. It's the old Baker Mayfield. I don't know. I just woke up feeling dangerous. Like, we need to put that on the soundboard.
No,
like, that is kind of what you're relying on. And that's, as a NBA basketball team, can't be what you rely on. You have to rely on the fact that you have the players that you need in-house to get the job done. And that is why the Warriors need to be proactive here. And whether they tell Clay, hey, man, you're coming back on like a minimum salary and we're happy to have you and your role is going to be different, or if you want to go get money, like you're going to have to go get it somewhere else, or they tell Draymond, you got a different role, or whatever it is, they need to be aggressive. I realize that you also want to be human. Like, you don't, like, there's so much goodwill built up there. They made you so much money. They won you so many rings. You don't want to be a jerk about it. You don't want to be a bad person about it and treat one of your legends poorly on the way out. But realistically, you are trying to get Steph another ring, and he's still good enough. And if that's the case, you owe it to him, and everyone else has got to just understand that this is what it's about. Like, your play is the one that fell off, not his. And so what is it that you want to do with the final years of Steph's career here? And that could involve some very interesting trades and very interesting and aggressive moves for the Warriors this offseason. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, we wrap up the show with real things real people said into real microphones. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Great show today. If you missed any part of it, check the podcast on the Hoffman Show podcast feed. Just search the Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app. Full first hour was our mock draft 3.0. Commanders took Jaden Daniels, courtesy of me. I had the even picks. Anthony had the odds. We alternated. Next week, we will do mock draft, whatever, probably 4.0, probably be our last one, is the way that we'll do it. I'm not 100% sure. I can't 100% guarantee that we won't do one before then. Last week, the plan was to do one last Wednesday, one today, and one next Wednesday. And then by Friday, we were like, well, what if we did something different? So if we got nothing else on Friday, maybe we'll do 4 then and then 5 next Wednesday. What I can tell you is the Friday after that, we won't do another mock draft because we'll have a first-round pick to talk about because the draft is Thursday. It's 8 freaking days away. Point is, though, if you missed it, you definitely want to check it out. I'm going to try to edit together a better on-demand version for YouTube as well, where I can put the results in, or at least some kind of visual component in. So work on that, see what I can do, because the screen capture of our actual mock draft was not very helpful today, and so we're working on the technology piece, and it's still good audio, though. The discussion's really what matters. And we got one for you in the podcast feed at the Hoffman Show. Just search your favorite podcast app. Also, I will say, Anthony, I have to send you the audio of this. We're going to go ahead and put on YouTube at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman my chat with Croy Bethune, the Spirits rookie midfielder who is absolutely crushing it. We talked about how she's able to stay so calm even though she is a rookie. Like, does she know that this is supposed to be hard? It was a fun conversation with Croy. Also talked about her relationship that's budding with Trinity Rodman, who somehow is younger than her. Aunt Trin's been in the league for like 3 years. She's played in a World Cup. Croy's been in the league for like 3 weeks. Trin's like a year younger than Croy is.
What in the world?
Yeah, Trin was a baby when she got in the league. She's 19.
Dang.
Still only 22. So much talent. Still basically a baby. But no, sure, Trin's a star, and Croy is right there with her. Croy, certainly someone that could be in the mix for the U.S. women's national team in the not-too-distant future, especially once they get past Paris and the Olympics this summer. By the way, congrats to our guy Noah Eagle. Is going to get the call to call the basketball over for NBC in the Olympics. So that's really exciting news for a great friend of the show. And then other than that, so Croy's going to go on all our on-demand platforms, and we'll try to play it for you on the radio here later in the week. But with the Spirit playing a huge game Saturday at Audi Field, got a chance to talk to her. We had Aaliyah Edwards earlier in the show from the Mystics. She was awesome. That's up in the podcast feed, and it'll be on YouTube in just a moment. And we also had some great playoff talk. So really great show. If you missed any part of it, highly recommend checking it out on the podcast. And it's very important that you listen to the entire thing because you might miss gems, as is about to be proven in Real Things, Real People Said into real microphones. Come on, Magic Button.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
So yesterday, Joe Beninati, yeah, you know him, Joseph Beninati, Joseph Puck Beninati, was on the show ahead of the Flyers and Capitals game where the Capitals season was on the line, and he said, watch out for a wacky bit late in the game.
I expect this one to be tight. I expect it to be really close. Philadelphia cannot let Washington get to overtime. Craig, there's the situation where if it's late in the game and it's tied, Philadelphia will pull the goalie in a tie game because they cannot let it get to OT.
So one thing that has always amazed me about play-by-play announcers is they are the most prepared people in the broadcast industry. Just look at us talk show hosts. We don't know what's going on all the time. Play-by-play guys, locked in, and the best ones especially. They have every stat the second they need it. They're ready for game situations. They've mentally prepared so that something wacky could happen, at the end of a game, and they know why it's happening, what the situation is. And obviously this is a pretty big detail, but he's thought ahead to that moment. What happens if Philly and Washington are tied late? Philly can't let this game go to overtime because then their season is over. There's no way for them to make the playoffs. It's win in regulation or go home. So sure enough, that's what they do, and this is what happens.
Through center, it's Oshie. Oshie working wide. Fires and scores! Washington has the 1-goal lead to protect with 3 minutes to go.
Sure enough, over 3 minutes to go in the game, Philadelphia's like, overtime doesn't help us. Washington, they're fine with overtime as long as they win. As long as they get a win in a shootout, whatever it is, just a win of any kind. That is what the Capitals needed. And thanks to the aggression from the Philadelphia Flyers, as predicted by Joe B, the Capitals get it done. Your Washington Capitals are playoff bound.
I still can't believe they pulled their goalie with 3 minutes. 3 minutes is just a long time to
but
be
the
without
thing is,
a goalie.
like, if you get the goal, then you put him back in there, and then you just build an iron fort in front of the net, and we cannot possibly let this puck in.
Yeah.
Like, you got to give yourself time to score.
I think you described it perfectly. They were too aggressive.
Yeah, it's easy to say in hindsight.
Yeah.
Who knew that Anthony Haney had so much hockey strategy in his noggin? All right, tomorrow, never read the comments. Linnell, going to be a great show. See you tomorrow.